I'm Elizabeth, 32 female. I live in a city I love, in a condo I bought myself, and I have a career that challenges and rewards me in equal measure. For the last 4 years, I believed I had the final piece of my perfect life in place. My fiancé, Marcus. It turns out I didn't have the final piece. I had a liability disguised as a partner, and he was about to make the most expensive mistake of his life by underestimating me. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Life, until that evening, felt like a meticulously managed project plan that was executing flawlessly. As a senior project manager for a major tech firm, my brain operates on timelines, budgets, and risk assessments. I build complex systems from the ground up, ensuring every component works in harmony. I applied the same logic to my life. My condo, with its minimalist decor and sweeping city views, was my sanctuary. My career was the engine, built on a decade of relentless work and smart decisions. And Marcus, or so I thought, was my partner, the co-manager for the biggest project of all, our future. We met at a charity gala. He was a corporate lawyer, sharp and devastatingly handsome in a way that seemed almost unfair. He had this easy confidence that drew people in, a smile that could disarm a hostile witness. I was usually immune to that kind of charm, seeing it as a flashy but ultimately hollow marketing tactic. But with Marcus, it felt different. He listened. He asked about my work not in a polite, cursory way, but with genuine curiosity, comparing the brutal logic of coding to the intricate dance of corporate litigation. He was 32 at the time, I was 30. We were equals, or so I believed. We were both ambitious, driven, and at the top of our respective games. Our courtship was a whirlwind of upscale restaurants, weekend trips to wine country, and intellectual sparring that I found intoxicating. He understood the long hours, the last-minute deadlines, the mental exhaustion. He'd have a bottle of my favorite wine waiting after a grueling product launch, and I'd have his favorite takeout ordered when he was drowning in case files. It was a partnership of synergy. We made sense. Our friends thought we were the perfect couple, the ones who had it all figured out. My parents adored him, his family welcomed me with open arms. It was all so easy. The proposal came a year and a half later on a trip to Italy. On a balcony overlooking Lake Como, with the Alps painted against the twilight sky, he got down on one knee. The ring was stunning, a classic emerald-cut diamond that was elegant and substantial, just like the future it was supposed to represent. I cried, of course. I said yes without a single shred of doubt. The project of us was moving into its next, most exciting phase. We decided on a long engagement, 18 months, to give us time to plan without the stress. A 300-person wedding isn't something you throw together on a whim. The venue was a magnificent old estate an hour outside the city, with rolling hills and a ballroom that looked like something out of a fairy tale. The deposit, a non-refundable $25,000, was paid from our joint wedding account. I say joint, but the financial reality was that I had contributed about 70% of the funds in it. Marcus was well paid, but he had expensive tastes, tailored suits, a luxury sports sedan, and a watch collection that made my eyes water. He called them investments in his professional image. I saw them as drains on his savings, but I reasoned that we had plenty of time to build our shared wealth after the wedding. I was the planner, the saver. He was the charismatic face of our partnership. It seemed like a fair division of labor at the time. My best friend, Samantha, was my rock through it all. An ER doctor, Sam has a built-in nonsense detector that is second to none. She's seen every kind of human drama imaginable and has a practicality that can cut through any amount of fluff. "He's charming, Liz, I'll give him that," she'd said once, a few months before the engagement party. "Just make sure the charm has a foundation. Check the load-bearing walls before you move all your furniture in." I'd laughed it off. "The walls are solid granite, Sam. This thing is built to last." The engagement party was meant to be the official kickoff to the wedding festivities. We de-rented a chic rooftop bar with stunning city views. 100 of our closest friends and family were there. I wore a white cocktail dress that made me feel like a bride already. Marcus was working the room, his arm possessively around my waist, that million-dollar smile plastered on his face. He was in his element. He raised a glass, clinking it with a fork to get everyone's attention. I beamed at him, my heart swelling with pride. This was my man. This was my life. Everything was on schedule, on budget, and on the path to a guaranteed success. I felt the familiar, comforting click of a project plan locking into place. The picture was perfect, a masterpiece of planning and love. I just didn't realize that someone was about to take a can of spray paint to the canvas. The clinking of Marcus's fork against his champagne flute cut through the happy chatter of the rooftop bar. A hush fell over our 100 guests. The sun had just set, and the city lights were beginning to twinkle below us, a perfect backdrop for what I assumed would be a perfect speech. I stood beside him, my hand resting in the crook of his arm, my smile genuine and full of adoration. I was so proud of him, of us. My parents were in the front, my mom already dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Marcus's parents looked on, their faces beaming with pride. This was it, the moment that officially started the countdown to our new life. Thank you all for coming, Marcus began, his voice smooth and confident. He had a public speaker's cadence honed by years in a courtroom. To see all of our favorite people in one place to celebrate with us, it means the world, especially to my beautiful fiancé, Elizabeth. He paused and squeezed my hand, leaning in to kiss my temple. I blushed, my heart doing a little flutter. She is my rock, my partner in everything, and the best project manager I've ever seen. She's planned this whole party, and she's planning a wedding that I'm told will be the event of the year. Laughter and applause rippled through the crowd. I gave a modest little wave. It was true. I had the binders, the spreadsheets, the color-coded timelines. Planning our wedding was the most joyful project I'd ever managed. And it's because of her strength, her unwavering support, that I feel I can finally be honest with myself, and with all of you, he continued. My smile faltered just a little. The tone had shifted. This wasn't the standard, gushing thank you speech anymore. A strange, unfamiliar current was running through his words. I glanced at Sam, who was standing near the bar. She had a tiny, almost imperceptible frown on her face. Her nonsense detector was pinging. For years, Marcus said, his gaze sweeping over the crowd but not quite landing on anyone, I've been on a path. The right schools, the right firms, the right career. I've been a corporate lawyer because it was expected, because it was the responsible thing to do, but I've felt a calling. A pull towards something more authentic, something real. My blood began to feel like ice water in my veins. This was not the conversation we did last week about billable hours and making partner. This was something else entirely. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his mother's smile tighten into a look of confusion. I've been feeling burnt out, disconnected from my own spirit, he announced, his voice taking on a dramatic, almost spiritual tone. And so, I've made a decision, a big one. With Elizabeth's love as my safety net, I'm ready to take a leap of faith. As of next Friday, I will be leaving my job at the firm. A collective gasp went through the crowd. It was so quiet I could hear the ice shifting in someone's drink. My own breath hitched in my throat. Leaving his job, his six-figure job, the job that paid for his German sports car and his collection of Swiss watches, my mind, the project manager's mind, went into overdrive. Risk assessment, critical. Budget impact, catastrophic. Timeline, derailed. I'm going to take some time off, he declared, now beaming as if he'd just announced a cure for cancer. No plans, no timelines, just space. Space to travel, to meditate, to read, to finally find myself, to figure out what my real purpose is on this earth. He turned to me then, that brilliant smile fully deployed, expecting, what? Applause, a tearful, supportive embrace. He seemed to genuinely believe this was the most romantic, inspiring announcement he could possibly make. He was taking our shared future and setting it on fire as a grand, romantic gesture. And the worst part, the unspoken assumption hung in the air, thick and suffocating, I would be the one to pay for this spiritual quest. My salary, my savings. My meticulously planned life would now be funding his journey of self-discovery. The silence from the crowd was deafening. My parents looked horrified. Marcus's father looked like he was about to have an aneurysm, but Marcus was oblivious, lost in the grandeur of his own narrative. He wasn't done. "I know this is a surprise," he said, finally acknowledging the stunned silence, "but I wanted to share this with all of you, the people we love, because this is the beginning of our new, authentic life together. A life not based on expectations, but on truth and passion. And I couldn't do it without my incredible Elizabeth footing the bill, just kidding." He laughed, and a few people offered weak, uncertain Chuck. Less, but really without her support. He raised his glass. "So, a toast. To new beginnings, to finding oneself, and to my beautiful, generous, and incredibly supportive fiancé, Elizabeth." The spell was broken. My shock morphed into a cold, diamond-hard clarity. He hadn't discussed this with me. He hadn't even hinted at it. He had hijacked our engagement party, in front of 100 of our friends and family, to announce that he was essentially retiring at 34, with the full expectation that I would carry the entire financial load of our very expensive life, including the 300-person wedding we were less than a year away from. I turned to him. The project manager in my head was screaming, red lights flashing everywhere. "Contingency plan, activate." But on the outside, I was calm. I smiled the sweetest, most serene smile I could muster. I leaned in, and as our friends and family began a scattered, confused round of applause, I pressed my lips to his cheek. It felt like kissing a marble statue. "That was quite a speech, darling," I whispered in his ear, my voice dripping with false admiration. "We'll talk about the details later." He squeezed my waist, triumphant. "I knew you'd understand," he murmured back. I pulled away, my smile never wavering. I kept it fixed on my face as I subtly retrieved my phone from my small clutch purse. While Marcus was being slapped on the back by a few of his more clueless friends, I shielded my screen with my body. My fingers flew across the screen, my muscle memory finding the contact instantly. It was our wedding caterer, the one we just paid a $15,000 deposit to. The subject line was simple: cancellation, wedding of Elizabeth and Marcus. The body of the text was just as brief. "Hi Jean Pierre, due to unforeseen circumstances, the wedding is off. Please cancel our booking for next June. I understand the deposit is non-refundable. Thank you, Elizabeth." I hit send. The small, delivered notification that appeared under my message was the most satisfying click I had ever experienced in my life. The first domino had fallen. The deconstruction of project, wedding, had officially begun. The rest of the party passed in a blur of forced smiles and hollow congratulations. I played the role of the supportive, if slightly shell-shocked, fiancé to perfection. I deflected my parents' worried glances with a reassuring squeeze of the hand. I answered concerned questions from friends with vague, cheerful platitudes. "Isn't it exciting? So brave of him," I'd say, my voice a pitch-perfect imitation of a woman who wasn't internally drafting a multi-stage exit strategy. Marcus was on cloud 9, completely oblivious to the crater he had just blown in the middle of our lives. He was surrounded by his friends, laughing and expounding on his newfound philosophy of shedding the corporate skin. He was a guru, a visionary. I watched him from across the room, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. It was like looking at a stranger, a badly written character in a play I no longer had any interest in watching. Sam found me by the railing, overlooking the city. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me a fresh glass of Prosecco. "Well," she said, her voice dry, "that was a plot twist." "You could say that," I replied, taking a long sip. The bubbles felt sharp, a tiny effervescent shock that grounded me. "Are you okay?" she asked, her eyes searching mine for any sign of a crack. "I'm fine," I said, and the scary part was, I think I was. The initial shock had been replaced by a cold, calculating anger. The part of my brain that managed crisis situations at work had taken over. Emotion was a liability. Action was the priority. I just canceled the caterer. Sam's eyebrows shot up. A slow, appreciative grin spread across her face. "Already? Liz, you are a machine." Deposit S gone, 15 grand. But it's cheaper than the alternative, I said, my voice low. The venue is the big one. I need to read the contract. The cancellation clause is probably brutal. Send it to me, she said immediately. I'll look it over. Don't do anything else with the big vendors until I do. Thanks, Sam. I knew I could count on you. Always, she said, her expression turning serious. But Liz, this isn't just about the money, is it? He didn't even talk to you. No, he didn't, I said, my voice flat. He made a unilateral decision about our entire future and announced it at a party. He used my support as a prop in his little speech. This isn't a partnership. This is a hostile takeover. We got home late. The celebratory energy had finally fizzled out, and Marcus was coming down from his performance high. He collapsed onto our cream-colored sofa, sighing contentedly. What a night, he said, loosening his tie. Don't you feel free, like we can do anything now? I feel a lot of things, Marcus, I said, setting my clutch on the kitchen island. I didn't sit down. I needed to keep a physical distance. See, mostly surprised. I know, I should have told you first, he said, waving a dismissive hand. But I wanted it to be this grand, romantic gesture, to show everyone that our love isn't about material things. Our love might not be, but our mortgage is, I said, my voice sharp. And the wedding, and the car payments on your investment in the garage, those are very much about material things. His face soured slightly. Don't be so pragmatic, Elizabeth. You're ruining the mood. This is a good thing. I've been miserable for years. Don't you want me to be happy? This was the classic emotional trap, the perfect checkmate. If I said no, I was the cruel, unloving shrew. If I said yes, I was co-signing his insane plan. Of course, I want you to be happy, Marcus, I said, keeping my tone even. I'm just trying to understand the logistics. You're quitting your job in a week. Do you have a plan? Savings to live on? My plan is to not have a plan, he said, throwing his hands up in exasperation, as if I was being deliberately obtuse. And savings? We have savings, don't we? The wedding account has plenty. The wedding account is for the wedding, Marcus. A wedding that costs as much as a house, which you seem to have forgotten. We can scale back. We don't need 300 people. We'll just have a small, intimate ceremony. Something more authentic. There it was again, that word, authentic. It was his new shield for every selfish, irresponsible impulse. And after you're done finding yourself, I pressed, what then? What's the end game? He sighed dramatically. You're just not getting it, Liz. This isn't about an end game. It's about the journey, but don't worry, I'm not leaving you in a lurch. He stood up and walked over to his briefcase, pulling out a glossy brochure. He handed it to me. The cover showed a serene-looking woman with dreadlocks meditating on a beach. The title read, The Ananda Soul Journey Retreat Bali. I'm thinking of starting with this, he said proudly. It's a 3-month intensive. Yoga, meditation, spiritual cleansing. It's run by this amazing guru, a woman named Aura. She's a certified Reiki master. I stared at the brochure. A crack appeared in my carefully constructed composure. It wasn't just the ridiculousness of it all, the sheer cliché of a man leaving his corporate job to find enlightenment in Bali. It was the name. Aura. It sounded familiar. Where had I heard it before? My mind sifted through months of conversations, stray comments, background noise. Then it hit me. A few weeks ago, I'd come home early and Marcus was on a video call. He'd shut his laptop quickly, saying it was a mindfulness coach his firm had recommended for stress management. I'd thought nothing of it, but I remembered the woman's voice. It was soft, breathy, and she had called him Mark, a nickname he hated. I looked from the brochure back to his expectant, smiling face. The crack wasn't in my composure anymore. It was in the entire facade of our relationship. This wasn't a sudden spiritual awakening. This was planned. And something told me his guru wasn't just a mindfulness coach. Aura, I said, testing the name on my tongue. She sounds inspiring. She is, he gushed. You'd love her. She just gets it. She understands that the material world is an illusion. I see, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. And this retreat, I assume it isn't free. Well, no, of course not. Enlightenment has its price, he joked weakly. But it's an investment in my spiritual well-being, in our future happiness. It's only about $20,000. $20,000 to be paid for presumably by me. The caterer's deposit was chump change. This was the main event. I handed the brochure back to him. It looks transformative, I said. The project manager was back in control, my mind clicking and whirring. New data point acquired. Hypothesis formulated. This is not just a midlife crisis. This is an exit strategy, and there's a third party involved. The investigation was about to begin. The next few days were a masterclass in emotional subterfuge. I was the picture of a doting, if slightly overwhelmed, fiancé. I listened patiently as Marcus described the various modules of his Ananda soul journey, which included things like chakra realignment and past life regression therapy. I nodded and smiled, all while my brain was a whirlwind of activity, processing data and connecting dots. The first thread I pulled was the brochure itself. At work, with the door to my office securely closed, I did a deep dive on Aura, the Reiki master. Her real name, it turned out, was Ashley Peterson from Ohio. Her online presence was a carefully curated fantasy of flowing white fabrics, sunset yoga poses, and cryptic captions about cosmic energy. She had thousands of followers, all seemingly captivated by her brand of store-bought spirituality. But it was her business registration that interested me. Anand. A Soul Journeys LLC was barely a year old. The address was a P.O. box. It screamed instability. Then I started digging into her social media. I didn't look at her main feed. That was the public-facing performance. I went into the tagged photos, the comments, the digital breadcrumbs people unwittingly leave behind. It took me less than an hour to find it. A group photo from a wellness conference in Arizona from 6 months ago. There, in the back row, was Aura, her arm draped casually around a man in a ridiculously expensive linen shirt. The man was Marcus. It was a gut punch, but a clarifying one. This wasn't a new development. This wasn't a coach his firm had recommended. This had been going on for at least half a year. The burnout, the sudden need for a spiritual journey, it was all a script they had likely written together. My next step was to contact Sam. I forwarded her the photo and a link to Aura's website. Her reply was instantaneous. A single, eloquent line of text. That absolute son of a snake. He's been planning this for months, Sam, I texted back. He's not finding himself. He's leaving me for a 25-year-old crystal healer from Ohio, and he wants me to finance his exit package. Her response, we need to move faster. Did you send me the venue contract? I had. Sam, in her infinite, lawyerly wisdom, found the loophole. The contract had a standard force majeure clause, an act of God clause that nullifies the agreement. It typically covered things like earthquakes, floods, or government shutdowns. But Sam pointed out a less common subclause: cancellation due to fraudulent misrepresentation or breach of the foundational terms of the agreement. What does that mean in English? I asked her over the phone that night, my voice a hushed whisper from my home office while Marcus meditated in the living room, humming ominously. It means, Sam said, her voice filled with predatory glee, that the contract for the wedding is based on the foundational term that there is, in fact, going to be a wedding. A legitimate, good faith union. If you can prove he entered into this agreement fraudulently, meaning he was already planning on leaving you and was using the wedding funds as his personal piggy bank, you can argue the entire contract is void. You could get your deposit back. The idea was audacious, brilliant. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about justice. It was about proving that my signature on that contract was obtained under false pretenses. How do I prove that? I asked. We need more than a photo, Liz. We need communication. Timelines, financial records. We need to build a case, she explained. Does he have a personal laptop, an iPad? Both, I said. He's careless with them. The passwords are all variations of his dog's name. That night, I waited until he was sound asleep, his spiritually cleansed breaths deep and even. My heart hammered against my ribs as I crept into our living room. It felt sordid and wrong, like a violation. But then I thought of him standing on that rooftop, using my love and support as a shield for his deceit. My hesitation vanished, replaced by cold resolve. His laptop was on the coffee table. The password, as predicted, was Buddy123. It took me a moment to get my shaking hands under control. I opened his email first. It was a treasure trove, months of emails between him and Aura. They weren't just about mindfulness. They were love letters filled with shared fantasies about their future. "Once you're free from the corporate cage, we can build our life together," she had written. "The retreat is just the first step. Think of the deposit Elizabeth paid for the venue. That money is our seed capital, my love. It's cosmic justice." Cosmic justice. They were planning on using my family's contribution and my hard-earned savings, the money I'd earmarked for the wedding venue, as the startup fund for their new life. The audacity was breathtaking. I found emails where they discussed his speech for the engagement party, workshopping the right words to make him sound brave and authentic, rather than deceitful and parasitic. There were links to one-way tickets to Bali, dated 3 weeks before the party. And then, the final, damning piece of evidence, a wire transfer confirmation. A week before the engagement party, Marcus had transferred $5,000 from our joint wedding account to Ananda Soul Journeys LLC. The memo line read, "Apartment deposit." He hadn't just been planning a retreat, he was funding her life with my money. My hands were steady now. My purpose was clear. I used my phone to take crystal-clear pictures of every single email, every flight confirmation, every wire transfer. I scrolled through his photo library. There they were, smiling on a beach in Mexico on a weekend he told me he was at a mandatory firm retreat. There they were, kissing in a photo booth, the date stamp clearly visible. He hadn't even bothered to cover his tea. Rax, his arrogance was his undoing. I compiled everything into a secure, password-protected folder and emailed it to Sam with the subject line, "The Foundation." I stayed up the rest of the night, not in a state of grief, but of meticulous preparation. I opened a new bank account in my name only. I called my credit card companies and had his name removed from my accounts. I logged into our joint wedding account and saw the $5,000 transfer to Aura's company. It was listed right there, a digital monument to his betrayal. Using the bank's transfer tool, I moved the remaining 70% of the balance, every single penny that I had personally deposited, into my new private account. I left his 30% contribution sitting there. He could have it. It was severance pay. The threads had all been followed. They had woven themselves not into a tapestry of love and partnership, but into a strong, unbreakable rope. A rope I would use not to hang myself, but to pull down the entire rotten structure he had built on a foundation of lies. The next week was a strange, surreal performance. On the surface, I was the supportive fiancé, helping Marcus prepare for his spiritual journey. I listened to him talk about packing lists. He was agonizing over whether to take his cashmere sweaters or just buy authentic linen shirts in Bali. I helped him research travel insurance. Each conversation was a fresh wave of nausea, but I pushed it down, focusing on the end goal. My grief had been processed, compartmentalized, and converted into fuel. Now was the time for logistics. While he was busy, shedding his material attachments, by buying a new set of expensive luggage, I was systematically deconstructing the life we had built. My first call was to the wedding venue. Armed with Sam's legal advice and the mountain of evidence I had collected, I requested a meeting with the venue's manager and their legal counsel. I walked into that meeting alone, a single binder tucked under my arm. The binder was my weapon. It was tabbed, organized, and cross-referenced. The venue manager, a severe woman named Mrs. Gable, and their lawyer, a man who looked like he'd been born in a pinstripe suit, were clearly expecting a tearful bride begging for a refund. They started with condescending sympathy. "Ms. Scott," the lawyer began, "we understand that engagements can be volatile. However, the contract you signed is ironclad. The $25,000 deposit is non-refundable. It covers the loss of booking for that date." I didn't say a word. I simply opened my binder and slid a copy of the contract across the polished mahogany table, a single paragraph highlighted in yellow. The fraudulent misrepresentation clause. "I believe this clause applies," I said, my voice calm and steady. Mrs. Gable scoffed. "Fraudulent misrepresentation? My dear, a simple change of heart does not constitute fraud." "A change of heart is one thing," I replied, sliding the next document across the table. It was a printout of the email from Aura, where she referred to my venue deposit as their seed capital. "Premeditated intent to misuse funds designated for your venue to finance a new life with another partner, however, is another." I continued, presenting my evidence piece by piece like a prosecutor laying out a case. The photo of Marcus and Aura in Arizona. The one-way flight booking to Bali, purchased before our engagement party. The emails where they rehearsed his speech. And the final exhibit, a certified bank statement from our joint account showing the $5,000 transfer to Aura's company. "As you can see," I concluded, my voice ringing with authority, "my signature on this contract was obtained under the false pretense that we were entering into a good faith union. In reality, my fiancé and his partner were conspiring to defraud me, using your venue's booking as a key part of their financial plan. This constitutes a fundamental breach of the agreement. I am not asking for your sympathy. I am demanding a full refund of my deposit, as stipulated by the terms of your own contract." The room was silent. The lawyer picked up the bank statement, his eyes scanning the details. He looked at Mrs. Gable, who had lost all of her condescending airs. Her face was pale. They weren't just facing a jilted bride, they were facing a potential lawsuit that could set a very messy precedent for them. Bad publicity about being the go-to wedding venue for con artists was not something their brand could afford. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We will, of course, need to review these documents. We will be in touch." I closed my binder. "You have 48 hours to confirm that my full deposit will be refunded via wire transfer. Otherwise, my lawyer, Samantha Riley, has been instructed to file a lawsuit for the amount, plus damages and legal fees. I've also taken the liberty of drafting a letter to the editor of the city's most popular wedding magazine, detailing my experience. I'd hate to have to send it." It was a B. Luff, but a good one. Sam would have backed me up, but the threat was enough. 2 days later, $25,000 was wired into my new private bank account. With the big dominoes, the caterer and the venue, taken care of, I moved on to the smaller, more personal details. The joint credit card was now solely mine. The shared streaming accounts were logged out on all his devices, the passwords changed. The wedding website we had so lovingly created, I took it down, replacing the homepage with a single, elegant message. "The wedding of Elizabeth Scott and Marcus Thorne has been canceled." I went through our condo, room by room, with a set of moving boxes. This was the hardest part. Every object held a memory, a ghost of the future I thought we were building. The beautiful espresso machine he'd bought me for my birthday. The framed photos from our trip to Italy. The ridiculous collection of vinyl records he never listened to but insisted looked cool. I packed all of it. Every book, every piece of clothing, every ridiculously expensive watch. I was an archaeologist, excavating a dead civilization. Sam came over one night to help. She found me in the walk-in closet, holding one of his tailored suits. The scent of his cologne still lingered on it. For the first time, a wave of genuine grief hit me, so sharp and powerful it took my breath away. "It's okay to be sad, you know," Sam said gently, taking the suit from my hands and placing it in a box. "You're allowed to mourn the man you thought he was." "I know," I whispered, wiping away a tear. "But I can't let it stop me. If I stop now, he wins." "He's not going to win," Sam said, her voice fierce. "You're dismantling his entire life, and he doesn't even know it yet. It's brutal, it's beautiful." By the end of the week, our shared life was neatly packed into 26 moving boxes. I called a storage company and had them picked up and taken to a unit I had rented in his name. The first month was prepaid. After that, it was his problem. My final act of deconstruction was the most symbolic. I took the beautiful engagement ring off my finger. I hadn't worn it since the party. I drove to the jeweler where he had purchased it, a place he'd bragged about getting a great deal. I had the diamond appraised. It turned out the great deal he got was because the diamond's clarity was 2 full grades lower than what was stated on the certificate he'd so proudly shown me. It was worth less than half of what he claimed he'd paid for it. Even our engagement was built on a lie. I didn't sell it. I placed it back in its velvet box. It would be my final exhibit. The dream was fully deconstructed. The stage was now set for the final act. The day Marcus was set to leave for Bali arrived with a sense of cinematic finality. It was a bright, sunny Friday, the kind of day that promises new beginnings. For him, it was the start of his spiritual quest. For me, it was the day I closed the books on the worst investment of my life. He was practically vibrating with excitement, zipping up his brand new, ridiculously oversized suitcase. He had been so wrapped up in his own narrative for the past 2 weeks that he hadn't noticed a thing. He hadn't noticed the missing photos on the walls. He hadn't noticed that the walk-in closet was suddenly echoey and half-empty. He hadn't tried to use the joint credit card. His arrogance was my invisibility cloak. "I can't believe this is really happening," he said, beaming at me. "My flight is in 5 hours. Are you sure you don't want to come to the airport?" "I'm sure," I said, handing him a cup of coffee. "I have that big product launch at work, remember? I can't get away." It was a lie, of course. My project had launched successfully 2 days ago. Today, my only project was him. Right. Always the dedicated project manager," he said, patting my arm condescendingly. "Don't worry. Once I'm spiritually aligned, I'll be able to contribute in more meaningful ways than just money." "I'm counting on it," I said, my voice dangerously sweet. He finished his coffee and grabbed his wallet and passport from the kitchen island. "Okay, so the finances. We need to sort that out before I go. Just transfer the 20 grand for the retreat into my account, and I'll be all set. And we should probably talk about a monthly budget for my expenses while I'm gone." This was the moment, the confrontation, but it wouldn't be a screaming match. It would be a business meeting, an audit. "Have a seat, Marcus," I said, gesturing to the bar stools at the island. My voice was different. The forced sweetness was gone, replaced by the cool, crisp tone I used when a vendor was about to have their contract terminated. He looked at me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. For the first time, he seemed to sense that the atmosphere had changed. I slid a single sheet of paper across the island towards him. It was a professionally formatted invoice. At the top, in bold letters, it read, "Fin. Al invoice, reimbursement for fraudulent expenses." He stared at it, his brow furrowed. "What is this? Is this a joke?" "Read it," I commanded. He picked it up. The invoice was itemized. Item 1, unauthorized transfer from joint account to Ananda Soul Journeys LLC. Amount, $5,000. Item 2, reimbursement for 1/2 of non-refundable deposits for canceled wedding vendors. Caterer, florist, band. My half of the loss, which I am absorbing. Your half is your responsibility. Amount, $12,500. Item 3, reimbursement for funds fraudulently spent on non-disclosed travel and entertainment with a third party during the period of our engagement, Mexico trip, etc. Amount estimated, $4,000. Item 4, emotional damages and breach of contract consulting fee. Amount, $1. He looked up from the paper, his face pale. "What are you talking about? Canceled vendors? What is this?" "I know everything, Marcus," I said, my voice level. I placed a second document on the island, a printed copy of the email from Aura about their seed capital. "I know about Aura, or should I say, Ashley Peterson from Ohio. I know you've been planning this for at least 6 months. I know you intended to use my money to fund your new life with her." His face went from confusion to panic. "You went through my things, my laptop, that's illegal." What's illegal, Marcus? I shot back, my voice like ice, is committing fraud. What's illegal is conspiracy to steal. You, a corporate lawyer, should know that. You were so arrogant you didn't even bother to cover your tracks. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment before continuing. So let's talk about the finances. The wedding is canceled. All the vendors have been notified. The joint credit card has been closed. The joint bank account has been drained of my contributions. Your 30% is still in there, though. You should have just enough to cover this invoice. His jaw was on the floor. He was utterly speechless. The charming, confident guru had vanished, replaced by a panicked, cornered man. The $20,000 for your soul journey? I continued, leaning forward. That's not going to happen. You see, I took that money, along with the venue deposit that I got back, and I invested it. In me. I paid off my car and maxed out my retirement fund contributions for the next 2 years. A much better return on investment, don't you think? He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. And all your things? I said, gesturing around the now sparse apartment. Your suits, your watches, your precious vinyl collection, they're all safe. They're in a storage unit. In your name. The first month is paid for. After that, it's your problem, just like the lease on your sports car. My name is officially off it. You'll have to handle that from Bali. Finally, I picked up the velvet ring box and pushed it towards him. And this, you should take this back. I had it appraised. It seems your great deal was just another lie in a long line of them. I believe the term is fraudulent misrepresentation. You should be familiar with it. He finally found his voice, a desperate, strangled whisper. Elizabeth, you can't do this. I love you. I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. No, Marcus, you don't love me. You love the idea of me. You love my stability, my income, my support. I was your safety net, your launch pad. But you made one critical error in your project plan. You assumed your project manager was a fool. I stood up. Your flight is in 4 hours. The taxi I called for you will be here in 10 minutes. It's prepaid to the airport. Consider it my final contribution to your new, authentic life. I walked to my bedroom and closed the door, my heart pounding not with anger or sadness, but with the thrilling, terrifying, and deeply satisfying feeling of liberation. The project was complete. The final invoice was delivered. I didn't watch him leave. I heard the front door open and close, the final, quiet click echoing the one my heart had made when I canceled the caterer. I stayed in my room for a long time, just breathing. The silence in the condo was different now. It wasn't empty, it was peaceful. It was mine again. The first few weeks were an adjustment. I'd walk into a room and expect to see him, or I'd automatically make enough coffee for 2. They were phantom pains of an amputated life. But with each passing day, the phantoms faded, replaced by a growing sense of space and possibility. The condo felt bigger. My time felt more abundant. My future, which had been so rigidly mapped out on a shared timeline, was now a beautiful, terrifying blank page. Sam was, as always, my anchor. We ordered takeout and drank expensive wine on my living room floor, surrounded by the empty spaces where his furniture used to be. So, what's next for Elizabeth Scott? She asked, topping up my glass. I'm thinking of redecorating, I said with a smile. Maybe I'll paint the living room a ridiculous practical color, something Marcus would have hated, maybe a deep, dramatic teal. I love it, she laughed, a teal-colored middle finger to his memory. Exactly. The fallout from the great unwedding, as Sam called it, was predictable. My phone buzzed with texts from confused friends and relatives who had seen the cancellation notice on the wedding website. I drafted a single, polite, and firm message. Due to personal reasons, Marcus and I have decided to end our engagement. I appreciate your support, but I will not be discussing the details. I wish him all the best. It was concise, professional, and left no room for gossip. Marcus's parents called me once. His mother was crying, apologizing, and asking if there was any chance for reconciliation. His father was furious, not at me, but at his son for the public humiliation. I was polite but firm. I'm sorry for your pain, I told them, but the decision is final. My relationship with Marcus is over. As for Marcus himself, I heard through the grapevine that his Bali trip was a disaster. Without my $20,000 contribution, he couldn't afford the Ananda Soul journey. He went anyway, but instead of a luxury retreat, he was apparently staying in cheap hostels. His friend, the one who had slapped him on the back at the engagement party, told another friend that Marcus was miserable. Aura, or Ashley, had apparently not been impressed with his downgraded financial status. The cosmic justice she envisioned apparently required a healthy bank balance. Their spiritual connection, it seemed, was contingent on a strong Wi-Fi signal and an Amex card. About 3 months after he left, a letter arrived for me, forwarded from his parents' address. It was from a collections agency regarding an overdue payment on a storage unit. I smiled and threw it in the shredder. A few weeks after that, another friend mentioned seeing Marcus's prized sports car being repossessed from in front of his parents' house. I never felt a shred of guilt. My revenge wasn't loud or explosive. It was quiet, systematic, and complete. It was the careful deconstruction of a lie, piece by piece, until nothing was left but the truth. He didn't want a partner, he wanted a sponsor. And when the sponsorship was withdrawn, his entire enterprise collapsed. 6 months after the party, I was in my newly painted teal living room, drinking coffee and reading the Sunday paper, when I got a text from an unknown number. It was a picture. It showed a page from a cheap-looking catalog for a local community college. Circled in red ink was a course, Introduction to Paralegal Studies. Below it, a message. Figured I'd start my journey back into the real world. A little less cosmic, but the tuition is more reasonable. I'm sorry, Liz, for everything. It was from Marcus. It was the first time his words felt even remotely genuine. He was finally taking a step, however small, toward actual responsibility, not performative authenticity. I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about the anger, the betrayal, and the cold fury that had fueled me for weeks, and I realized, to my surprise, that it was gone. All I felt was a distant, quiet pity. He was just a man, lost and foolish, who had made a series of terrible decisions. His punishment was having to live with the consequences of being himself. I didn't write back. There was nothing left to say. I deleted the message, took a sip of my coffee, and turned the page in my newspaper. My project was over. The books were balanced, the final reports filed. My future was unwritten, and for the first time in a very long time, I was the sole author of my own story, and I couldn't wait to see what the next chapter would hold.